Hey everybody, it's been a month or more since I last did a video because, I'm busy doing stuff. So anyway, welcome to the 4th year anniversary of my second Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film of The Wrath of Trakeena. I want to do something different for the anniversary today, June 29th, and I thought, why not do a video talking about why did the film failed, hence the title of the video and what's right in front of you. Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena was my magnum opus. It was formerly Rise of Trakeena, and I never really thoroughly explained why the movie turned out the way it was. Now, compared to where I was when I did a vlog after the film, after I uploaded the film on my channel, this very channel here, thinking I was going to praise it like it was the best thing ever made, when really, come to think of it now, 4 years later, it's not the best thing I made in the world. Not even with my first movie of the film series with the paper puppets and stuff. Because as I'm about to get close to doing production on my next film, which will likely be my last, because if that doesn't succeed, then I'll just straight up just stop making fan films of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy and move on to something else until the day I'm off this world and whatnot. Because, to be honest though, as I am approaching the big 30 in the next less than 2 months at the time of this video recording, I really do need to talk about Wrath of Trakeena 4 years later and where things went wrong. And gotta realize how I was in my mid-20s, between age 25 and 26 when I released it in 2018. It was a very different environment, knowing the fact 2018 was not so long ago, but it kind of feels like it is. Although 4 years isn't that long as of yet. I mean, give it until it's been 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, then it really has been a long time. But until then, it's just not so long ago, according to me, even though 2018 was just that long ago since I released the film. As of 2022, the film still has about 1,400 and some views. I'm not asking anybody to go I'm not asking anyone to go out their way and watch the film on their own accord or do it by force. I mean, it's just the fan film just wasn't great. And I can see why, as I explained, probably 4 or 5 reasons why Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena did not do well as somewhat I hoped. But really, it had to do with how I was for the last decade as a YouTuber that does Power Rangers content, and especially doing a fan film with those things. Okay, so when the last I discussed about the fan film, it was just right after I had uploaded it. And after I spent almost a decade on Rise of Trakeena, you can tell I was easily burnt out from doing any more of these films, because I realize now that I'm nearing that next decade of life in the next 2 months. I look back on how I was throughout my mid to late 20s making the 2 films I did, and knowing that, I think a lot of people just didn't want to see the fan film because there were other things people wanted to see at the time, and Power Ranger fans wanted to delve into what was very popular at the time, like the Shattered Grid comic, the Shattered Grid stuff in the comics, and for Power Rangers fan films like Power Rangers Unworthy at the time. So that would explain why Wrath of Trakeena got lost in the shuffle. But there's actually other factors as to why the fan film just didn't make it. So it was 2018. It was Power Rangers' 25th anniversary year. And we had Super Ninja Steel, the last season of the Neo Saban era. The Boom Studio Comics with Power Rangers was really at its peak with the Shattered Grid saga, and Beyond the Grid afterwards. And Necessarily Evil. Hasbro buying the Power Rangers franchise outright from Saban. But then there was, and then for Sentai, there was for Super Sentai, there was Lupin Ranger versus Pato Ranger, but although I haven't got around that Sentai just yet. But at that time in 2018, there was a major shift of how I was seeing things with Power Rangers back then, as well as who I was back then. I was still that Power Rangers fan that was still doing stuff like this. I was very against the Neo Saban era. I was very against how Power Rangers was going with the show during Ninja Steel and Super Ninja Steel. Dino Charge, yeah, was at least good and stuff, but I just didn't like the direction that the Power Rangers television show was going for. So that's why older fans like me pretty much pivoted to doing stuff like this until I probably would get bored of the hobby eventually. And then, or just straight up retire from the hobby. But, you know, the fan film just was anyone's forte. It wasn't anyone's cup of tea. It was just something that I just put out there just because, and it just didn't have the attention that I was hoping it would get. Now, I think it had to do with the fact that, well, the reason why Wrath of Trakeena was looked down upon or was just never seen, I think it had to do with the fact, given my past with a fan film of this, with the same particular medium, was, well, very critical in how I was when making that film back then. So there's got to be some, at least 4 or 5 reasons why Power Rangers Lost in Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena just didn't make it, and I will explain to you guys why this fan film didn't make it. I'm not asking you guys to see it, but it exists on my channel, but it's just nobody wants to talk about it, or it was just something I did back in the day and realizing it was just one of those things I post sporadically just because. So here are my reasons why Power Rangers Lost in Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena failed. What was the competition? What was the environment at the time? What was more important with Power Rangers and Sentai within the fan base at the time that was more important, or Power Rangers fan films that were coming out at the time that would pretty much pave the way of how fan films should be now, as opposed to what I was doing since circa 2014? Well, I'll tell you what the environment was in 2018. Like I said before, it was 2018. We were at the 25th anniversary of Power Rangers with Super Ninja Steel, Boom Studios doing the Shattered Grid story in the comics, and we also had Power Rangers Hyperforce, which I haven't done a video on the podcast yet, because I'm just my hands are tied on stuff, even if I'm just bullshitting off camera or off video recording. We had Sentai was Lupin Ranger vs. Pato Ranger, like I said, but then there was this big shakeup for the Power Rangers franchise, not Sentai, but Power Rangers. Hasbro would get the franchise from Saban, and as well as the toy license. Bandai America announced back in February, by the time Super Ninja Steel started airing, that after 25 years, Bandai America would no longer produce any more Power Rangers merchandise and toys after Super Ninja Steel going forward. It would result to the reason why the 2017 movie failed, and I know it would probably, I think Saban is probably blaming us, the fans, for why the movie failed, or probably a fan like me is the reason why the movie failed. And given how I was as a fan at the time, being egotistical and out of my ass all the time. But I want to specifically talk about why my fan film series of Power Rangers Lost in Galaxy that I did by myself failed during the 2010s. One would have to be the fact that I was being too egotistical and being too entitled, thinking that the fan film was going to be better than what the TV show was doing again at the time. Because where I was standing during my 20s as a Power Ranger fan in his 20s, you know, just trying to figure out what to do with his life, even though I haven't made much effort, I was acting like this Lost Galaxy, Rise, Wrath of Trakeena, whatever the thing was I was making, was going to be better than what, you know, the Neo Saban era was doing at the time. And that's why I acted like, this is so much better than Ninja Steel. This is so much better than Dino Charge. This is going to be so much better than that Power Slash Ranger short that Adi Shankar did. But when really it's not. Because to be honest though, the reason why my fan film content of Power Rangers failed obviously has to do with me. Because I've been wanting to open up about why my fan film stuff failed for the last 8 years. Is because, you know, despite that I live at home all the time and I'm mostly doing this as a homemade movie, this is not a movie that I wanted to make for crowdfunding and make money off and then end up getting likely sued by Saban, now Hasbro, when it comes to fan films of Power Rangers. Knowing the fact I made the fan film 2.5 years before Hasbro even thought about buying out Power Rangers from Saban for the overall franchise, and then Bandai in terms of the toy license. The merchandising and toy rights to Power Rangers from Bandai to Hasbro. So therefore, this fan film was done before that. And by the time I had released the film, Saban Brands was already shut down, and we were slowly transitioning from Saban to Hasbro by the time the fan film had come out. But by this point, we were also looming to Power Morphicon 2018 around this point. And Power Morphicon 2018 was taking place in Anaheim. And I know, and I finally got that right, because I know that when I did my original somewhat intended series finale of the Terra Venture podcast, I wanted to end the podcast on that note with the Power Morphicon news thing. Because I was also at the point after I finished Wrath of Trakeena, and when we were already entering the Hasbro era of Power Rangers, starting with Beast Morphers the very next year, 2019. And it was Power Rangers Lost Galaxy's 20th anniversary, while it was also RPM's 10th anniversary, when Beast Morphers was airing in its first year. And then by 2020, we entered this decade, and, you know, with the big V and all, I started slowly losing interest in Power Rangers. And I started losing interest in the thing that I was into, that being the fan film. Even though it's a fan film thing I did all by myself, but I'm not proud of what I've done with the fan film. Particularly the way how I changed Trakeena in a certain way that I don't think no Power Ranger fan was interested. And again, I was also trying to compete with what... Even after the fact the 2017 movie just came out, and, you know, with what Elizabeth Banks did with Rita in that movie, and I was trying to make Trakeena like that in my movie, but it just didn't work. And I was also copying some aspects of Power Rangers 2017 within this film, except the Rangers already had their powers and stuff. It's just the thing is, it was going to take along for the movie to get to what I was making fun of the 2017 movie with, because it was in a way of me trying to make the film better than what I was doing before with the film I did in 2014. But I think this movie did way worse than Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2014. And it's so hard for me to look back on Wrath of Trakeena now than ever before, despite the fact it's been 4 years since I made it. Well, actually, in terms of releasing, 4 years, 6 years if you count when I actually started filming the movie in 2016, and then completed production by January of 4 years ago, 2018. And also, there was just so much, like, other stuff I can bring up, but I know it may sound like bullshit, and this is just me seeking attention again, as always, when realizing the fact that I was always doing stuff for attention, and that's gotta stop. It's gotta stop. Due to the fact that I wasn't really actually making much effort in making the film somewhat believable. I know that I was acting like I was trying to be some big Hollywood director, producer, and such with this thing, given my mindset and my mentality at the time, and probably still today, is because, you know, I don't have much time in the world still doing these fan films of Power Rangers. I should have done them at a certain limit and a certain time, but I procrastinated. I was lazy. I was bullshitting all the time. And not only that, you know, I was going through stuff at the time by pre-production of the film, and why the film didn't work. And I wish I would talk about those things, but, you know, especially one thing in particular, like, oh, that person I originally wanted to play Trakeena thing back 12 years ago and whatever, but I'd rather just put that away and just realize it was a thing. It happened. But the problem is, you know, I did the film in a time when I just lost my dad, okay? And knowing the fact I'm still one of those guys who still live with somebody, and yeah, you can make fun of me because I'm some basement dwelling Power Ranger fan of a man-child making a fan film by himself. Nobody wanted my help, and I had to struggle and go stir crazy and make a fool out of myself on the internet and off the internet. But the thing is, I was acting like the movie was going to be better than what I thought it would be, but it's not. Okay, but also, furthermore, with the environment part, my YouTube channel was suffering a lot of copyright content ID problems between me and Saban. Now, it took Saban 6 years to find my YouTube channel of all content I did of Power Rangers, although I was not the only one that was doing videos of me ripping on Neo Saban era and Ninja Steel and stuff. And right around the time of Super Ninja Steel, Saban did the exact same stuff to smaller Power Rangers YouTube channels like myself, and some others at the time, like Mr. Weenie Productions and others, that were going through some content ID problems over some, you know, claiming that every single Power Ranger thing on a fan-made Power Ranger channel comprised of a lot of video clips, when usually, this is why I called out Saban for flagging all of my videos outright for the movie having or my channel having so much content of me ripping on Power Rangers, because my attitude was just not there at the time. I was very cynical of where the direction of the franchise was going is all. It's just, if there was something I just didn't like what the show was doing, I just didn't like what the show was doing. But that just goes again, me being entitled as a fan at the time. But I realized now that Hasbro has Power Rangers, I don't hardly do that as much anymore. Yeah, sure, there's some things I'm still ticked about with the Neo Saban era with like Super Mega Force or whatever, but I just honestly just did not like the direction of the franchise. That's why I did my fan films of Lost Galaxy, and I was just living out that Lost Galaxy nostalgia, and nostalgia for the older seasons of Power Rangers at the time, given the fact I'm older. I'm an older fan. Here's another reason why the film failed. The second reason why the film failed was due to its timing. The timing was very last minute, and I was having a hard time around this time today, June 29th, 4 years ago, because I was also having, you know, where I live at here in Gaithersburg had that Summerfest thing, and I was still at home rendering the last bit of the fan film, because I was rendering the fan film on Sony Vegas overnight, because it was a 3-hour movie, which I'll talk about the 3-hour thing. And there was a lot of stuff to render, although the computer I had at the time was running so slow in terms of rendering time, and also knowing the fact Vegas Pro 10 was a very old version of Sony Vegas at the time anyway. And maybe I should have delayed the film some other time in some other place once it was fully completed, without bull rushing to have it out at a certain Hollywood movie release date type mandate. And, you know, by that point at the same time, while I released Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Wrath of Trakeena, but knowing the fact I put the film unlisted, it was already uploaded, but I had it unlisted because Saban was still operating, but they were like a few days away from shutting down their studio, and Hasbro was now starting to take over Power Rangers. So I pretty much waited until July the 2nd of 2018 to make my film fully public, because I had those copyright claims by every single video I did about Power Rangers. But of course I don't have a lot of majority of those old uploads of those videos anymore, because Saban and how things was at the time on the channel and on my end, with the content ID problems. So July the 2nd or July the 1st, I made my fan film public, and I knew then and there by the time I made it fully public after it was unlisted at first, the fan film, I knew then and there from the first 2 months of its upload, from July to September of 2018, the movie was not performing as well. The fan film didn't do as I hoped. It didn't get the numbers I wanted. Though the first fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy I did, well, let's face it, that fan film sucked. And because not only that, I was dealing with online harassment back then when I did that film. But this one, I did it when I was like, okay, everyone pretty much forgot it ever existed, but I still have those mental issues, quote unquote, and stuff. And I was, I just wasn't doing as good. I was barely holding on after I had lost a certain family member during and before and after production on this film started. And then I had to move in this apartment. I was still pretty much hardly doing anything besides making pointless Power Ranger videos instead of doing what I was supposed to do, that being the fan film. But I never did. Instead of doing all that other stuff, I could have been doing the fan film, but I did do the fan film, but I was also more still concerned of the direction of the TV show. But even though I do not own Power Rangers, so make that clear in the disclaimer, but I acted like I owned Power Rangers when really mentally, emotionally, and such I don't. It's just I act like I own the franchise, but I don't. No one does. If you're a fan of something, enjoy it. But even though I realized I was acting like a toxic Power Rangers fan, and I've been a really bad Power Rangers fan, and hence why my fan film stuff sucked, and that's why I'm also in this black dark abyss while during these last 2 years of the Big V as of currently. And even before the Big V, 2019, I had uploaded less videos that year. Why do you think? That's why after I had done the fan film, I just didn't want to upload much videos in 2019. Even Willis, if it was Lost Galaxy's 20th anniversary or not, and by the time the Hasbro era started. So yeah, the timing was just horrible because again, I was still like frustrated with all of the copyright content ID claims I had from Saban. And I'm surprised Saban actually found out about my fan film content of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy that I did with the puppets and stuff, and so forth. The next thing why Wrath of Trakeena failed, it would have to do with the fact I tried to hype this fan film up like it was going to be better than my first movie, or better than anything out in Power Rangers, period. Whether it be the official thing, the comics, fan films, the 2017 movie. Yeah, that kind of hype. Because the thing is, I've worked on Rise of Trakeena for almost a decade at that point. And 2018 was 2 years away from being officially 10 years. But even though it was really 8 years. Because, 8 years since I started doing fan films of Power Rangers since 2010. That was back when I was still when I was 18, I was stupid. I didn't know nothing about making movies and stuff. And even when I was still in my early to mid 20s, I didn't really know nothing about making fan films. But that's why I at least tried. At least I tried. But it just wasn't the best thing I made. But there were a lot of factors why it failed. Like, I had too many far shots with the camera, behind certain outside backgrounds or green screen backgrounds, or too much close-up shots that looked really atrocious, like Shyamalan type close-ups, and stuff like that. Or repetitive dialogue. That's another thing that was wrong with the film. Not only that, most of the majority, 50% of the fan film was like unscripted, but there was a script. I just didn't want to upload the script as it was messy and back when I was trying to make a script. And then I would probably upload the fan film script online somewhere on like Microsoft OneDrive or something, or wherever I could have uploaded the fan film, maybe on the script for it, maybe on Facebook, probably for people to read what the film would be about. But I was also going through demands of what to change in the film last minute before I would fully finish it, because there was, before the cut you guys have, there was this other cut of the fan film that I was going for, back in early 2016. Again, you know, basically having real life tell the story a little bit in a way, that trope. But I pretty much had to talk it over with somebody about the film, even though that person had no involvement in what I was making at the time, and still don't with anything I do, period, because same old song and dance. But so I had to change the film from what it was going to be during its first year of filming and try to make it more like Power Rangers in the last minute, but it just wasn't good. And plus the drastic change with Trakeena again. So that would explain why the movie just didn't work. It just didn't work at all. And I wish I could have done things differently, but I just have to accept things are what they are with that. But yeah, hyping the fan film, I even hyped the fan film out before it would even come out. Before I would even finish it, and then upload it, and then the trailers. Well, the trailers didn't get much people's attention because it, you can tell that it was going to be crap. And I think that's why for now on I'm not doing no more trailers, because I don't know how to make good movie trailers anyway. Okay, was there any competition for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy: The Wrath of Trakeena? Hardly ever, because like there was no Power/Rangers sequel or anything out at the time, or MMPR, Dominic Savilli's MMPR still being worked on or not anymore. But months ahead there was Power Rangers Unworthy, but I was not in any way competing with Power Rangers Unworthy. No offense to Unworthy Productions out there, but honestly, Unworthy, I haven't even, the thing is, with me and why I haven't looked at anybody else's Power Ranger fan films besides my own and a few others that I did give a chance and only watched once is, well, I did watch Zordon of Eltar and Teenagers with Attitude years before I even started doing Wrath of Trakeena. And I liked Zordon of Eltar and Teenagers with Attitude. I did give my honest opinion on Teenagers with Attitude, but I never did give a video. Wait a minute, I did do a, I think I did do an opinionated review video on Zordon, the Zordon fan film, but you know how I felt with Power/Rangers, and given how insecure I was and how I was getting too entitled just because I didn't like that person's vision of doing an R-rated Hollywood dark and gritty like Power Ranger thing on the internet, on YouTube, and thinking my Lost Galaxy fan film with the paper puppets and Trakeena would be better than what that was doing, or the 2017 movie, but I realized I was nothing but a fucking joke. So turns out I hate to say this to anybody who is a Power Rangers fan, I am a fucking joke, okay? I was a complete joke making these films, but I was going through things. I was, nobody wanted to give me the time of day. I hardly ever talk to anybody about my projects because everybody's talking about real world stuff. Yeah, the fan film thing is whatever I'm doing and whoever is doing, but I really act like this was better than anything Power Rangers on this world. That just go to show how entitled I was, and how selfish I was, and how narcissistic I was. And that narcissism, entitlement, selfishness, like Robin from Teen Titans Go kind of way of thinking, is why the films failed, and that's why I failed as a Power Rangers YouTuber and everything else. So I don't think I have no more chances to make any more movies. I do want to do more films, but I feel like the fan film and its failure. Now, thinking about this. Now, when you think about this, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy: The Wrath of Trakeena was a very ambitious fan film. Well, quote-unquote ambitious, if you will, but it wasn't really that ambitious. It was ambitious in terms of trying to do a longer than 2-hour fan film, yeah, but it just wasn't what people wanted to see. Which brings me to the 3-hour runtime thing. Okay, so the 3 hours of the movie, the extended cut is 3 hours, so is the cut that you guys saw around this time 4 years ago, for those who probably did saw it. But Wrath of Trakeena, I thought about this, because I argued with my brother about this many times, every once in a blue moon. even though he never wants anything to do with my fan films, or actually nobody wants anything to do with my Power Rangers fan films for that matter anyway. But I had doubts about why did I make the fan film 3 hours long, knowing there was too much extended this, extended that, and maybe I should have took the time to edit out certain things so that way the movie wouldn't draw itself out too long, like the length of this video or that Trakeena spin-off short that I did in 2019, which was 50 minutes. But I really probably should have done the fan film for about an hour and 12 minutes or something, or an hour and 5 minutes, because there was like 2 hours. Well, again, it was I had 2 years from 2016 to 2017 filming the movie. So with 2 years of all of that footage, how was all of that was going to make it into the movie? Well, I should have used my fucking common sense and realized the movie probably should have been a 2-part movie, like Power Rangers Lost Galaxy: The Wrath of Trakeena Part 1 being in 2018, and then Wrath of Trakeena Part 2 will be like 2019. And maybe that should have been the trilogy. But then what would make of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy Infinite Frontier? Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 4? Or something like that of that nature? Because honestly, I wasn't planning these movies out very well, and that's my fault. I'm not going to point fingers at people for this. This is all my own doing in my own accord. All right. So therefore, I probably should have did the fan film as a 2-part movie and be done with it, because nobody was going to sit on their butt-numbing asses on their computer screens or laptops or smartphones at the time during that environment of 2018 when everybody was all about Avengers Infinity War, Mission Impossible, Fallout, Incredibles 2 and all of that at the time. So, and then but specifically with Power Rangers, with the 25th anniversary and all that other stuff that was going on that year with Power Rangers. So therefore the 3 hours was a bit much, and I feel like the fan film, you know, pretty much I pulled a Turbo, a Power Rangers movie on myself. But even though the fan film was 3 hours worth of stuff, because, you know, again, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy: The Rise of Trakeena took me almost my entire livelihood in my 20s to finish and make. Because again, when I was still that 18-year-old soon to be graduating high school student in 12th grade in 2010 and 2011, I didn't know nothing about making movies. Why then? What was the point of me fucking doing video production in 12th grade 12 years ago then for no reason then? I mean, of all the times I always wanted to do wanted to make movies, but I guess the inspiration was all over the place and it was all schizophrenic on my behalf. No wonder that's why I felt so isolated, or I choose to be isolated from the world and everyone close to me and far from me and stuff. And it was not going to be easy. I haven't worked my way up to get this far in terms of actual effort. I didn't put no actual effort into the movies I made. But yet I can make effort in making a bunch of videos calling out people calling me and stuff on YouTube because I made a paper puppet fan film calling me an autistic for playing with paper dolls for a Power Ranger fan film and all that other stuff at the time. And thus, that's why I have even worsening mental health problems, to the point I haven't done another movie in major fan film of Power Rangers in 4 years. Trakeena, the Insectile Queen of Darkness, does not count. That was just ancillary to pass some time until my next major movie of Power Rangers. But again, Wrath of Trakeena probably should have been a 2-hour movie, or it should have been an hour and 12 minutes or something. Or like the estimate runtime of a typical Lifetime or sci-fi TV movie. 1 hour and 20-some minutes. Maybe that, I guess. But yeah, there was just too much of this, too much of that. The finale was too long. The Megazord fight near the end of the film was too long. Trakeena's 2 different duels with the Red Ranger was too long. I just had too much. I wasn't sure how to structure that movie properly. Not only that, you know, I was in the same, my next point, I was in the exact same rut with Power Rangers as a fan, to the point that back in the 2010s, and like I've said before, due to my own personal me thing with Power Rangers back in the Neo Saban era, to me, Power Rangers, not saying it for everybody else, but for me basically, but Power Rangers, in my opinion, was dying. Like, to the point that, well, maybe it's just simply I just grew up and grew the fuck up and realizing that I'm too old for certain things. The fact I just didn't like where things were going. I did not like how Megaforce turned out. I know for a fact, but, you know, I gotta let that go now. But, you know, we got Dino Fury now, so, and Hasbro taking over Power Rangers. But it was a different time, different place back then with Power Rangers. But personally, I've always compared the Neo Saban era of Power Rangers to the Disney era in its darkest age from the 70s and early to mid 1980s. Because basically the fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena I did, honestly, come to think of it, and based on the failure of the fan film, I have a feeling that I did a fan film of Power Rangers that could have been like the Black Cauldron of Power Rangers fan films. Because when you think about it, here's a history lesson with that. Now, when you think back to the 1980s with Disney, now when Disney back in the 1980s, they wasn't doing so good in the 1980s. You know, when people think of animated films, you know, and why, like, even like with Transformers the movie, even though Proto Man on his Why Did Transformers the Movie 1986 failed at the box office back on August the 8th of 1986, he did a similar point. And I'm doing a similar point to, and I'm not going to try to be like him and say what he just said before, but I did the exact same way where, okay, like Power Rangers, you know, the gap between Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2014 and Wrath of Trakeena, there was a 4-year gap between the two fan films I did. Now, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2014 was not great by any means, given the online harassment and the trolling harassment I dealt with at the time with that film. And to the point, the film did turn out really horrible, to the point it cost me to wonder if I should do another one. But then you go into 2018 and I did Wrath of Trakeena. The film cost me everything. Big everything. And to the point, I felt like I don't want to do no more fan films anymore. Hence why I've been having worse mental health problems. I'm having problems outside of this, you know, and all that, which I shouldn't say on the internet overall in full. But it's just based on my own accord why I did the fan film for 3 hours and trying to do Trakeena totally different from what Amy Miller did with the character 23 years ago, and all of that. But I wasn't doing nothing right. Maybe it's just I was scared of using legacy characters. Well, even though I already used a legacy character like Trakeena, and realizing I did her completely, utterly wrong from what she was. And I know I do not own that character. I do not own anything Power Rangers when making the fan film. And I wanted to use my own protagonist characters, you know, OCs basically, Mary Sue's, Gary Stu's, whatever, as the Rangers in this universe, rather than use Leo, Kendrix, Kai, etc. as the characters again in this universe. But luckily in the next movie, there will be Leo, Damon, Kendrix, Maya, and Kai, and Mike in the film. But this version of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy I did in the 2010s, I was trying something back then. Something different. But I guess nobody wanted different. So that's why I felt like, what's the point making the third and final installment of this story, of this version of Lost Galaxy? And yeah, so there was that. But anyway, the reason why I brought up the Black Cauldron. Now, Disney, when Disney did the Black Cauldron, that film was an absolute failure on Disney's behalf. To the point, the Black Cauldron cost Disney any uncertain future if they wanted to do any more animated features. Because you know, when you go back to the 80s, Disney in the 80s, when they did Fox and the Hound in 1981, which is 40 plus years ago now, that was the last time Disney would make some good numbers on that movie, although despite the mixed reception for that film at the time. But when you go into 1985, when Disney did The Black Cauldron cost Disney everything. It cost them millions of dollars for the studio's overall revenue. And the failure of The Black Cauldron cost Disney was uncertain whether if they want to do any more movies in animation. Because at that time, if you were a kid of the 80s, animation was doing better at home with the likes of Transformers, G.I. Joe, and the Ghostbusters cartoon after the hit movie came out of 1984, Ghostbusters, and, you know, Voltron and all those. But I'm not an 80s kid. I'm a 90s kid with Power Rangers, Pokemon, Batman animated series, Animaniacs kind of kid. So, but the reason why I'm comparing Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena with The Black Cauldron is because Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena is my Black Cauldron of Power Rangers fan films. If The Black Cauldron cost Disney not to want to make any more animated features, but they would eventually with Great Mouse Detective and then Roger Rabbit and Little Mermaid and so forth, Wrath of Trakeena for Power Rangers fan films, by contrast with me, cost me not want to make another movie for a while. Or probably stop making fan films with these paper dolls and just move on to something else. Hence why for the next movie I decided to do custom 12-inch action figures. I don't know if you guys would like that or not, but I can't force you guys to like whatever I put out. You know, it's your opinion. Choose if you like it or not. So I'm not the arbiter to tell people what not to like, what to like. So there you go. So I just gotta understand. Because again, the film cost me in my uncertain future. No wonder that's why starting June 29th of 4 years ago today, and by the same time as what particular childhood toy retailer closed down this exact same date? Toys R Us. And around the time Toys R Us completely shut down here in the States, yeah, but Canada still has Toys R Us though. But I released the fan film on the same day Toys R Us closed down. And starting July 1st of 2018 up till today, I have been severely depressed with where things were going. And also, I was already depressed and I was disappointed, utterly disappointed with The Wrath of Trakeena. Because I made that film. I made the film to be an epic fail. It was going to be some 3-hour epic, only to be a 3-hour epic fail. But that's my fault, right? Exactly. So I have to understand that, you know, the reason why I'm acting like this and why I'm acting so angry a little bit lately today, because today's the day I released the fan film 4 years ago, but only to realize it just was terrible. To the point it pretty much scared me away from making any more fan films for a while. Yeah, I did Trakeena, the Insectile Queen of Darkness in 2019, but even that was stumbling to find an audience on my channel. So during the pandemic years of 2020, last year and this year, I have not once have done anything about my fan film content of Power Rangers, due to the fact I had to reevaluate what I was doing with Wrath of Trakeena the last time I did a major fan film. Because to be honest though, I really have not learned my mistakes from what I did during those years, and I really shouldn't be beating myself up about that stuff, but I have, and I still am. But no one cares. And to be honest though, that was on my own accord. Why I did the film the way I did. Here's another reason why the film did not work. Story-wise, it should have been a more condensed story. You know, I was trying to, you know, again, I know a lot of people don't know, I was the guy behind that Rise of Trakeena project that would become Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena. Now, the original Rise of Trakeena fan film project, which I'll talk about next time, that was back when I didn't know what I was doing back then when I was younger, when I was 18 years old 12 years ago, thinking I could make a movie back then when I was still in high school. But the fan film went through many years of development and production hell, not in a Hollywood sense of production, you know, development hell and production hell, but like development and production hell in terms for fan films, like how long it took for this to get made. But once I finally finished it, it felt like I failed. I've been defeated. And in fact, I have been defeated. And the film defeated me. And I defeated the film too. And I put it out there for no one to watch it. And to the point I was told by people, don't give up all the time. But I turn around, I fail. And yeah, I know the vent won't let me talk, and just like talking over the microphone, because like if you can barely hear me. But honestly, I really should have never did what I did with the film. Okay, my next tangent why Wrath of Trakeena failed would have to be the choices I made with Trakeena herself. And, you know, for starters, I think a lot of Power Ranger fans don't know how much I love Trakeena and why she is one of my favorite female Power Rangers villains, but the way how I did her was perhaps the most controversial I ever did. And honestly, again, I was going by the influence of what the 2017 movie was doing with Rita and Goldar in the movie, in that movie, but I really should have never changed Trakeena's character dynamic from what Saban intended the character to what I was reimagining her to be, and making her completely a totally different character from what Power Ranger fans traditionally know. And again, well, I made a big mistake changing Trakeena and Scorpius' relationship in the universe of films I did, and because I felt like I was desecrating canonical canon to Power Rangers when making the film, but yet again, I do not own the rights to the franchise. Then again, speaking again about it, but I really should have never changed Trakeena and Scorpius' dynamic from father and daughter to brother and sister, or whatever, or husband and wife, mother and father of, or whatever. I don't know what the hell I was doing back then. It's just I wanted to do something that was not the original character of Trakeena, where she was the daughter of Scorpius, blah blah blah, and all of that. I mean, this is supposed to be like labeled as a separate continuity, but yet I have design elements of the TV series in something that's fan made, and I couldn't come up with my own designs because I was also worried and worried and was in fear of being judged for designing the characters completely differently and everything else. Hence why I kept things somewhat the same for nostalgia's sake, but not great. So that's why I kept, the Ranger suits the same, the Megazords the same, Stingwinger somewhat the same. But now when it came to Trakeena's, Trakeena's cleavage to her costume, that I was, this is another thing I never did learn my lesson about, and one of the reasons I got in some deep trouble 12 years ago is that I was trying to make Trakeena have somewhat sex appeal, but she can still be evil when I was doing this fan film, but I sucked at it. There was, and we were already in the zeitgeist of the Me Too movement with things in the world and whatnot, with the whole over sexualization of women, or real or fictitious, and I really was going through some things at that time, and why I decided to make Trakeena have that Divatox like cleavage to her costume on those puppets, and with the likeness of that bitch from Sons of Anarchy, now Billions, on it. And I honestly I made a big mistake. Now, speaking of my fan cast choice for Trakeena for the puppets, I made a big mistake deciding Maggie Siff's likeness for Trakeena at the time. At first, I should have went with someone that should have looked like Trakeena. But look, given my nostalgia for Lost Galaxy in terms of Power Ranger seasons before Samurai Megaforce and such, given I'm a fan of the original Saban stuff, and again, Lost Galaxy is my favorite season, The one where where a Power Ranger died midway during the show, despite a real life behind the scenes issue with an actress playing said Pink Ranger. And many characters had gone through loss and grief and sacrifice and redemption and Terraventure and all that. But a lot of people don't realize how much I liked Lost Galaxy because of Trakeena and her character. But I guess no one gave me the time of day to care and why I cared about her. And I think nobody will understand. But again, I was also in the zeitgeist. And again, we were also in the zeitgeist of all of this Mighty Morphin nostalgia and stuff. And you know how I was at the time. But now it's time I accept that Mighty Morphin is what is Power Rangers' very own bread and butter, the one and only. Because maybe I should have done an MMPR fan project of my own because given the nostalgia. But I was still insecure and bitter, entitled, selfish, and whatever adjectives, and being too much of a tardish man baby about why is there too much MMPR and stuff, and realizing that it is what it is. Because I wanted to do a Lost Galaxy film because nobody thought about it at the time. But eventually, in a few years, give it 10 to 15 years, somebody's going to do a better Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan-made film better than what I was trying for so long, because I'm a fucking joke. I am. No lie. Because it's just, it was not easy for me to make it the way how I was. And given my attitude, my mindset, my mental stability or instability, and what I was going through in my times. But thank God I'm going to be so glad I'm out of my fucking 20s, because my 20s was terrible. And even the fact I just didn't know what to do in my life back when I did these films. This one in particular. But then again, it is what it is with me. Maybe I spent too much valuable time in my 20s doing these paper doll fan films of Power Rangers. And maybe that commenter, obviously a troll like Justin Garrett, was right. Even though I blocked his ass on social media for calling me out, again, the F word, even though Pride Month is almost over, so I shouldn't say that word. But you know, then again, I chose to do the fan films with puppets, but I feel like I should not do that no more. Given the fact that I only have one life to live. We all have one life to live. Anyone with a YouTube channel has one life to live. So, honestly, if I had done Power Rangers, and that's why I had doubts. Like, if I had done Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena differently, like I said, I probably should have done the fan film for like an hour and 20 minutes, cut out all the erroneous amount of 2 years of footage, massive footage I had over the course of 2 years, and just only stick to footage that would make it an hour and some minutes for people to sit and watch, despite the fact not everybody was going to watch it anyway, because it was just too long and nobody really got the idea of the film. So that's why the fan film got lost in the shuffle. Oh yeah, and Ranger Board, they pretty much already forgot I ever exist. They don't want to hear about this anymore. They pretty much want to ignore me at all costs. So let them fucking ignore me, because to be honest though, I'm done. I'm fucking done. I'm done. So yeah, I just wish that I could have done something different, differently, but I gotta move on. There's other fan films I'm working on Power Rangers. So honestly, now when Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2022 does come out, don't expect nothing great out of this one coming up, because I'm through hyping up fan films and thinking they're going to be pieces of hot shit when really they're not. So they're simple as that. I'm just not going to hype up no more fan films anymore. I'll just put out updates to let everybody know I'm working on these movies, but just don't hype them up like they're going to be something great when really they're not, given how I do the shit. So there's that, folks. Yeah, I just wish that Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena would have been done differently if I cut the film down to at least an hour or something, or 50 minutes like the Trakeena short film I did. But the Trakeena short film I did. But I honestly decided to do something different.